Well, it's always entertaining for me, at least, to watch First Take on ESPN and on I think it was Thursday morning or Friday morning. They were talking about the Texas-Georgia game, and I think they got it completely wrong. Well, obviously they got it wrong if they were picking Texas, which I don't recall if they did, but I think they were asking the wrong question. They were asking the wrong question. The question was, can this be a legacy game for Arch Manning? And there's a few things to dissect here when you're watching programs, and there's a few things that turn people on in a big way. The Cowboys, the Lakers, and in the world of college football, right now it's Arch Manning. It used to be Deion Sanders. And that was the wrong question to ask. The right question, as it turns out, was, is this going to be a legacy game for Gunnar Stockton? The difference between Gunnar Stockton and Arch Manning could not be more profound. One is massively sought after, highly touted recruit, family name, etched in football history. A guy that's learning how to play on the fly, but a lot of momentum for Arch Manning coming in the 2025 season, possibly the number one overall draft pick. None of that was being said about Gunnar Stockton. I don't think he's going to be the number one draft pick. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But the thing about Gunnar's situation that could change soon is you could be seeing him as not just like in New York. I think he could certainly be in New York. There's just, by the way, Freebird just has a brand new ad up in Times Square. Very good. Mama always said to drink more water, Freebird. It's up there from the Blue Ridge Mountains. That's where they bottle it from, where Gunnar's from. A couple counties over from where Gunner's from. But the question was the wrong question to ask. The question should have been, is this going to be a legacy game for Gunnar Stockton? The problem with that question is, has Gunnar already had a legacy game? When you put together as many good performances as Gunnar Stockton has so far this season, there's something to be said about his legacy right now. We don't know what the future holds with Georgia. We don't know. But I'm going to tell y'all, this is looking very different than it did in September. And I will remind you just how well Gunnar played. Even in September, it was pretty good. But it was like once the leaves turned, this thing really got very significant in a big way. Again, against Tennessee, the game-winning or game-tying, whatever it was, throw to London Humphreys. Here's his line from the Tennessee game where he made the game-winning plays. 23 of 31 for 304 yards. Another 38 yards rushing it. Against Kentucky, had a pretty good game, but it's from the Mississippi game on. A top 10 matchup against Ole Miss. He was a quarterback of the week nationally. 4 touchdowns, only 5 incomplete balls. Another touchdown. So that's a 5-touchdown game against top 10 Ole Miss. 5-touchdown game against top 10 Texas. Against Mississippi State, 3 touchdowns throwing it. Against the Gators, 2 touchdowns and the kneel down, the game-winning play. I would say he had the game-winning play against Auburn. But they were asking the wrong question. And I understand. So Cam Newton has gotten much better in my view as time has gone on with dissecting things. He's a very good listen as it relates to these things. Quarterback, that guy's played at a very high level, clearly at quarterback, from a Heisman Trophy winner. I saw that in person. But I think that's the wrong question to ask. Stephen A. Smith is not, college football is not his specialty, and I get that and understand that. I don't always watch a lot of television in the morning, but when I do monitor it, I guess you could say, and it's almost always NFL. That's where their bread is buttered, ESPN, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But the thing about it is, and you get sort of on the surface looking at things. That's why we had so much discussion about Miami at the beginning of the season. Miami was not built to last, and that's come to fruition. But Georgia is. I think Ohio State is. I think Indiana is. Notre Dame certainly looks like they are. There's some cracks in Texas A&M, Indiana. Ole Miss has had some jumpy games. Everybody's had jumpy games, Georgia included. Ohio State beat this Texas team that Georgia beat by 25. They beat them by 7 points earlier this year. I think it was I don't know if you can have this, but I think it was a decisive 7 points, but it was 7 points. It's a Texas team that ran for 100 and whatever it was yards against Ohio State. They ran for 29 against Georgia, I think it was. So not much. And you cannot compare apples to, apple pears or whatever is out there. I don't know. It's not a real thing. But it's hard to compare Granny Smiths to, Fuji's. And that's really kind of what the Ohio State-Georgia comparison is with Texas. Ohio State, if they played Georgia, would be favored, should be favored. I don't think it would be by a ton, though. And then, you look at Alabama. Alabama's not playing well lately. I mean, the LSU game was not good. The South Carolina game was not good. They lost to Oklahoma. That was not good. A lot of the challenges that Oklahoma has had, the lack of explosion on offense has really started slowing this Alabama. I mean, Alabama's not been explosive this year offensively versus what they've been in the past. No, it's not the same at all. Georgia's not explosive, and they were explosive against Mississippi State, but they're not scoring 60-yard touchdowns. No. They're getting to the fourth play in a drive, and that basically ensures that they will score. I'm going to have something on this later this week, but when Georgia gets to their fourth play in a drive, the likelihood that they score goes way up, drastically. Part of that's because that means you've gotten a first down. But even on 4-play drives, they're scoring sometimes. So I think Gunnar, I think the likelihood of him being in New York is pretty high, actually, because they still play Georgia Tech in a marquee game. I think that if he goes for 5 touchdowns in that one, you could see his stock really pop. I think the likelihood of him winning the award is not high right now. However, I think he will be a favorite or the favorite coming into 2026. And I think that my criticism of media is not rooted the same way that many people's is. I work in this industry. I understand it. I think that I know what works. I mean, again, when you talk about the Lakers, when you talk about the Dodgers, when you talk about the Sox and the Yankees, when you talk about any NFL team, but they focus on the Cowboys, the Patriots. I mean, no one's talking about the Panthers because no one cares about the Panthers. No one's talking about the Falcons because no one cares about the Falcons. The most I've ever seen people talk about the Falcons was today when Michael Penix looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So there are spotlight things. Arch Manning is that in college football right now. A season ago, it was, and Carson has been a lot of that too, by the way, but not at the level of Arch Manning. It's not at all at the level of Arch Manning. And now what we will have coming into 26 is, if you forget, and it's not just Stephen A. It's everybody doing this because they know what happens, okay? Is that in our industry, attention matters. And no one, whether good or bad, whether you're running Deion Sanders down or praising him, it has to be an extreme. It has to be one or the other, okay? And Arch elicits reaction from people. He is clickbait. But it's not a substantive discussion in a way that the articles that are written, the videos that are performed, the television that is done about Arch Manning is a first-year starting quarterback in the SEC who is struggling but has high potential. That's what he is. That does not mean so he is Jacob Eason who's just didn't start as a freshman, okay? Except Jacob didn't have the Manning last name and all this stuff. So we do these things, and along the way, we don't talk about Connor Shaw, who was exceptional as a quarterback. We don't talk as much about Haynes King as perhaps we should. Is there a player more important to their team than Haynes King? I don't think so. Now, other people can correct. I mean, I don't know enough about college football to declaratively say that, but I'm not sure there's a person more important to their team than Haynes King at Tech. And then you know, when you look at who could have had a legacy game, there were two people that could have had that Saturday night. One was Arch, the other was Gunnar. I don't know if either of them had that, but it certainly was not Arch. And I when I wrote last week about the Mississippi State game, I said this in the article. I said this. I said, has Georgia turned the corner on this season? I think they may have. I think that's not for me to decide, but I think they may have. I think all of the decisions earlier in the season to play guys that were maybe younger / raw, or maybe it was not decisions that they were made. Maybe they earned it in practice. Though all of that is now you're seeing that, and it's like, oh, well, they're playing a lot. Oh, well, when you play more, you get better at playing. It's not magic. I mean, there is no magic here. This is nothing but work. That's it. Like, it's not magic. People are they're having to go out there and do it. And now you're seeing, though, because of the trials and tribulations of having to beat Auburn on the road, having to beat Tennessee on the road, the reality of the loss, even though you played better than Alabama, certainly after the first quarter, you still lost that game. And Alabama earned that win. And living with that, and the slew of tests like they had against Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, the rivalry games with Auburn and Florida. This season has been one thing after another. And that's what this league is like. But it's been one thing after another. And the one consistent thing has been Gunnar Stockton. I mean, I'll tell you when he doesn't play well. I don't know where he's not played well. He played well against Alabama. I don't think it was an unbelievable night for him, but I think he played well. He's not had a game this season where he has had one game this season where he's thrown under 60%, which was the Marshall game. And I think they played pretty well against Marshall, to be honest with you. He scored 4 touchdowns in that game. How many times has he scored 4 touchdowns or more? Texas, Ole Miss. I'm going too slow here, but you get my point. It's a lot. That's a lot of touchdowns to score. He's thrown 19 touchdowns. He's thrown 3 interceptions. He's thrown for almost 2,300 yards. The game-winning plays against Tennessee. He scored the game-winning touchdown against Mississippi. I don't think he scored the game-winning touchdown. He threw the game-winning touchdown against Texas, but it was a 25-point win. He has been consistently good. He has elevated his play because he is more comfortable now because he's had the repetitions that he needed to play. I told y'all it's going to be really hard. This is a season ago. I told y'all it's going to be really hard for Georgia to win the national championship. They just lost their starting quarterback. And everybody's like, no, it's all good. Not everybody, but the loudest, the vocal majority, they had plenty to say about that. This is not like that. This is a very different conversation right now. This is not the same guy. This is not the same guy at all. This is Rabin Gunnar. And if you know, you know. And now I know. All you got to do is watch him play against Jefferson or go watch him play against, one of the private schools in Atlanta. I can't recall the name. That's on me. Pace. So watch him play Pace. Watch him play Jefferson. These are guys there's guys at that team, on those teams. Okay, Malachi Starks, Sammy Brown, etc. And you go watch him play the mountain schools, and then you saw the guy that I knew at some stage was coming out. You saw that guy. That's what you're seeing now. But Stephen A. and Cam the wrong question was being asked. Can this be a legacy game for Arch? Yeah, it could have been if he had a run game. But that was the wrong question. Arch was not in a situation where he could elevate his game. Part of that's on him. But a lot of that's on. They just got their ass whipped on the line of scrimmage. I mean, I had a there was a meeting with Greg Sankey that some of us had before the Georgia Texas game, and I remember the last question that Greg had. He said, "Well, that question is to get a response, like a particular response." And he was right about that, but all questions are that way, by the way. But I think that the question that was asked right there on First Take on, I think it was Thursday morning or Friday morning, that was a very specific question to elicit a response about Arch. That game was not about Arch. If his name was not Manning, he would be the Tennessee quarterback, or like guys that can do things, but they're not. I mean, I think he's better than Lenore Sellers. Lenore Sellers is not dependable. Marcel Reed's not dependable either. But if his last name weren't Manning, people wouldn't be crushing him so much or elevating him so much. But that question was for a particular response, because Joe Common fan that is not hardcore, Dawg Post watcher, subscriber, they don't know who Gunnar Stockton is. I mean, they probably do now, but they certainly didn't at the beginning of the season. Everybody knew who Arch was. Everybody knew who Arch was. This was his first season as a starter, and everybody knew who Arch was. Everybody knew who Arch was in 2021 when A.D. Mitchell was catching a ball from J.T. Daniels. You remember J.T. Daniels? Everybody was aware who he was back then. It was to elicit a particular reaction from the crowd. No judgments, but that's what it was. Thanks for watching.